The courtroom was suffocating with silence, the air thick with tension as every gaze locked onto Detective Carl Bishop. He stood tall in his crisp uniform, his badge gleaming under the dim artificial light. His voice, calm and authoritative, cut through the quiet like a knife. "I saw her break into that store with my own eyes," Bishop declared, his words echoing across the room. "She used a crowbar, pried the door open, and ran out with a bag of stolen goods. That's her, Your Honor." "I swear on my badge." A wave of murmurs rippled through the spectators. Some nodded in agreement. After all, why would an officer lie? Others exchanged uneasy glances. The defendant, Alexa Rodriguez, sat motionless at the defense table, her face unreadable. She was dressed in a simple navy blue suit, her posture upright, yet something in her unnerving stillness sent a chill through the room. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't pleading. It was as if she already knew how this would end. Across from her, Josh Harper, her appointed attorney, fidgeted with his tie. He had seen this scenario before, clear-cut case, an officer's testimony outweighing everything else. The jury always leaned in favor of law enforcement. The prosecutor smirked, sensing victory. "Your Honor, the evidence is overwhelming." A respected detective, a man who has served this city for years, saw her commit the crime. "What more do we need?" Judge Robert Kane turned to Alexa, his face impassive. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, Ms. Rodriguez?" The room held its breath. Alexa's fingers traced the edge of the table as she slowly stood, smoothing her blazer. She took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change everything. "Detective Bishop has just made a terrible mistake," she said coolly, her voice controlled, almost amused. "He's lying under oath, and he doesn't even realize." She turned slightly, her sharp gaze locking onto the detective. "I'm a high-ranking Navy SEAL." The courtroom exploded. Gasps, whispers, shifting seats. The entire room shattered in reaction. Even the judge's expression faltered. The prosecutor's smirk vanished. Bishop stiffened, his throat bobbing as he swallowed. His fingers twitched at his sides. This was not the reaction he had expected. Judge Kane's gavel slammed down 3 times. "Order! Order in the court!" Silence fell again, but the energy in the room had shifted. Alexa's voice remained steady, a quiet storm brewing beneath her words. "Detective, do you want to reconsider your testimony before I expose every single lie you've just told?" Bishop's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, a flicker of fear flashed in his eyes. Alexa tilted her head slightly. "Or should we start from the beginning? 48 hours earlier." The night was crisp, the city humming with distant sirens and the occasional honk of impatient drivers. Alexa walked down a dimly lit sidewalk, her gym bag slung over her shoulder. The faint scent of rain clung to the air, mixing with the distant aroma of street food. Up ahead, a young boy, no older than 10, sat on the curb outside a convenience store. His sneakers were torn, his hoodie too thin for the chilly air. He stared down at his hands, biting his lip. Alexa slowed, her military instincts picking up on subtle details. His hands were trembling, his stomach audibly growled. She crouched beside him. "You okay, buddy?" The boy hesitated before whispering, "I lost my money." Alexa's gaze flicked to the store. Through the window, a cashier watched them suspiciously. She could already guess what had happened. The boy had probably tried to explain himself, but people weren't always kind. She gave him a warm smile. "You hungry?" He nodded shyly. "Come on," she said, standing up and holding out a hand. "Let's get you something to eat." Inside the store, she let him pick a sandwich, a bottle of milk, and an apple. She paid for everything, not even blinking at the total. But as they stepped outside, something unexpected happened. A police cruiser screeched to a halt. Alexa barely had time to react before Detective Bishop jumped out, his face set with purpose. "Stop right there," he barked. Alexa frowned, her instincts flaring. "Excuse me?" Bishop marched forward, pulling out his handcuffs. "You're under arrest for breaking and entering. Witnesses saw a woman matching your description breaking into this store earlier." Alexa's eyes darkened. "That's a mistake." But Bishop wasn't listening. In seconds, her hands were yanked behind her back, the cold metal snapping around her wrists. The young boy looked up in shock. "She didn't do anything," he shouted. "She was helping me." Bishop ignored him, shoving Alexa toward the squad car. As she sat in the back seat, Staring out at the flashing city lights, her mind raced. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something more. And she was going to find out exactly what was going on. Back in the courtroom. The room was electric with tension. The prosecutor had gone pale. "A Navy SEAL," he stammered. Alexa nodded, standing tall. "That's right. Lieutenant Commander Alexa Rodriguez, United States Navy SEAL. And Detective Bishop is lying." Bishop's face turned ghostly white. He blinked rapidly, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Judge Kane tapped his pen against his desk. "Ms. Rodriguez, do you have proof to support your claim?" Alexa reached into her pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. "Yes, Your Honor." What Detective Bishop didn't know is that I had my body cam running the entire time, and it recorded everything. The courtroom burst into murmurs. Bishop visibly panicked. The judge's gavel slammed down again. Silence. He turned toward the prosecutor. "Play the footage." The prosecutor hesitated, then walked over to the clerk, who quickly connected the USB to a screen. The video began to play. There, for the entire courtroom to see, was the truth. Alexa walking with a young boy, paying for his food, speaking to him with kindness. Bishop pulling up, barking accusations, and slapping handcuffs on her without reason. A collective gasp filled the room. But then, something else appeared on the screen. Alexa had suspected something was off from the beginning. And now, as the video played, the courtroom froze. Because the footage caught something else. Something Bishop had desperately wanted to keep hidden. A shadowy figure lurked behind a store, just before Bishop arrived. A man, wearing a police badge. The judge leaned forward. "Pause that video." The screen froze. The shadowy figure's badge gleamed under the streetlight. Alexa folded her arms. "Your Honor, I believe we have more than just one liar in this courtroom." Bishop's hands clenched into fists. And just like that, the entire case had flipped upside down. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Every eye flickered between the frozen video on the screen and Detective Carl Bishop, whose once confident stance had crumbled into a rigid, panicked stillness. The shadowy figure in the video, the man wearing a police badge, was the detail that changed everything. Judge Kane cleared his throat, his voice sharp. "Detective Bishop, do you have an explanation for this?" Bishop licked his lips, his knuckles white as he clenched the railing before him. I don't know what this is." Alexa Rodriguez tilted her head slightly, her gaze unrelenting. "You don't know? Because it looks to me like there was another officer there that night. Someone who got away before you conveniently arrested me." The judge turned toward the prosecutor. "I want to know who that officer is." Immediately, the prosecutor shifted uncomfortably, fumbling with his papers. "Your Honor, I need time to verify this footage." Kane narrowed his eyes. "You have exactly 24 hours. This trial is adjourned until then." His gavel slammed down. The murmurs in the courtroom exploded into a low roar as people rushed to whisper theories, exchanging shocked glances. Bishop moved fast, stepping toward the prosecutor, his voice hushed but urgent. Alexa didn't need to hear his words to know what was happening. Damage control. He was scrambling, trying to twist the narrative before it spiraled further out of his grasp. Alexa exhaled slowly, controlling the fire burning inside her. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. 48 hours earlier, inside the holding cell, a dull buzzing fluorescent light hummed overhead, flickering slightly, casting shadows against the cold gray walls. Alexa sat on the stiff bench inside the holding cell, her hands resting loosely on her lap. Her breathing was steady, her mind racing. She had been in worse situations before. Trapped behind enemy lines, captured during covert operations, held under gunpoint by men who wanted nothing more than to see her dead. Compared to that, a low-security police cell wasn't even a challenge. But this wasn't just about her. Something was off about this entire situation. From the moment Detective Bishop had slapped the cuffs on her, there was something in his face that screamed this wasn't just a routine arrest. A calculated move. Someone wanted her silenced. And if there was one thing Alexa Rodriguez never did, it was stay quiet. A shadow passed by the cell door, followed by the low murmur of voices. Her instinct sharpened. Two officers, talking in hushed tones. "She's a problem. Yeah, Captain Stokes wants her handled before this goes public. Alexa didn't move, didn't react. But inside, her pulse slowed, her focus sharpening like the edge of a blade. Captain Andrew Stokes, the head of the precinct, the man Bishop answered to. And if he wanted her gone before this hit the news, that meant there was something bigger happening behind the scenes. Something they didn't want her to uncover. One of the officers laughed quietly. I say we let her have an accident before she gets transferred. Make it look like she started a fight. Self-defense, right? The other one snickered. Stokes would love that. Alexa's jaw tightened. They were planning to kill her. She could have waited. Could have played it safe. Could have let the system do its job. But she didn't believe in leaving fate in someone else's hands. Present day, outside the courthouse, Alexa stepped into the cold morning air, rolling her shoulders to shake off the stiffness. The tension in the courtroom had followed her outside, lingering like the dark storm clouds gathering in the sky above. She had 24 hours. 24 hours before the system tried to bury this whole thing. As she reached the sidewalk, she felt a presence nearby. Her instincts kicked in before she even turned her head. You have something on your mind, Harper. Josh Harper, the attorney the court had assigned to her, stood beside her, hands in his pockets, his face tight with barely concealed frustration. You should have told me. Alexa raised an eyebrow. Told you what? Josh exhaled, running a hand through his hair. That you were a SEAL. That you were going to drop a nuclear bomb in that courtroom. She smirked slightly. Would you have believed me? Josh opened his mouth, then closed it. Because the truth was no. He wouldn't have. He studied her for a long moment. You're not just defending yourself anymore. You know that, right? This is bigger than one false accusation. Alexa's expression darkened. I know. Josh hesitated, then lowered his voice. You think Bishop's the only one involved in this? I think he's a pawn. Josh frowned. And the king. Alexa's gaze flickered past him, toward the news vans, the journalists scrambling to put together the latest headline of her unexpected revelation. Stokes. Josh cursed under his breath. If you go after the captain, you better have something concrete. Because if you don't, he'll come after me first. Alexa finished for him. Josh's silence was her answer. Alexa smiled grimly. Let him try. Josh sighed. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I want to help. Alexa studied him. He was smart. Too clean for this game, but smart. Why? Josh looked away for a moment before answering. Because I've seen this before. Good people get steamrolled by bad cops. And if we don't stop it here, now it won't stop at you. He met her gaze again, this time with conviction. So, tell me what you need. Alexa exhaled, the weight of the moment pressing against her shoulders. We need to find that man in the video. Josh nodded, determination settling into his features. Then we better move fast. As they disappeared into the city, Alexa knew. This wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. This was about bringing them all down. And she wasn't planning to lose. The city hummed around them as Alexa and Josh moved through the crowded downtown streets, their steps purposeful, their minds racing. Alexa had one goal. Find the man in the video. The shadowy figure with a police badge, the one who had vanished just before Detective Bishop had swooped in with his fabricated charges. Josh walked beside her, phone in hand, scrolling through legal databases, police reports, anything that might give them a lead. We need access to precinct security footage from that night, he muttered. But there's no way they'll just hand it over. Alexa glanced at him, her lips curving slightly. Good thing I never asked for permission. Josh hesitated, then sighed. Yeah, I had a feeling you'd say that. 12 hours earlier, the plan takes shape. After leaving the courthouse, Alexa and Josh had set up in a quiet diner, one of those places where the coffee was bitter, but the noise drowned out any chance of eavesdropping. Josh laid out a list of names, every officer who had been on duty the night of her arrest. These are the cops who responded to the store break-in report, he said, tapping the paper. If the guy in the video is one of them, we need to find out who he is and why he disappeared. Alexa leaned in, scanning the list. One name stood out. Sergeant William Carter, a veteran officer. No history of misconduct. Yet he had filed no official report on the night of her arrest. "Carter," she murmured. Why didn't he say anything? Josh's brow furrowed. Because he's scared. Or because he's dead. Present of the break-in. Alexa and Josh stood outside the 23rd precinct, its towering concrete exterior blending into the skyline. The plan was reckless. It was also the only way forward. "Tell me again why we're breaking into a police station," Josh muttered. Alexa gave him a dry look. "Because I need access to their internal files, and asking nicely won't work." Josh exhaled, glancing around. "All right, what's the play?" Alexa nodded toward the side entrance, where a lone officer leaned against the wall, smoking a cigarette. "Stay here," she said. Before Josh could object, she was already moving. Smooth, controlled. Alexa walked toward the officer, her steps casual. "Got a light?" she asked. The cop barely glanced up. "Don't smoke." Alexa sighed. "Me neither." Then, with a blur of motion, she grabbed the back of his neck, pressing 2 fingers against the nerve cluster behind his ear. He barely had time to gasp before his body went limp, unconscious before he hit the ground. Josh stared. "Jesus." "Help me move him," Alexa said, already dragging the officer into the shadows. Josh hesitated. "You do this kind of thing a lot." "Only when I have to." Once the officer was out of sight, Alexa took his keycard, swiping it at the back entrance. The lock clicked open. "Stay close," she whispered, slipping inside. Inside the wolf's den. The precinct was eerily quiet. Alexa moved with practiced precision, her footsteps silent against the linoleum floor. They had minutes, maybe less. "Records room is this way," Josh whispered, checking his phone's map of the building. Alexa led the way, her senses on high alert. They reached the door marked Internal Surveillance Archives. Alexa pulled a small knife from her boot and slid it into the latch. Quick flick. Click. The door swung open. "I'm both impressed and terrified," Josh muttered. Alexa smirked. "Get used to it." Inside, rows of computer monitors flickered with live feeds from security cameras. Josh moved to the terminal, typing quickly. "All right, let's find Carter." Alexa stood by the door, listening for movement. "There." Josh pointed at the screen. The grainy footage showed the night of her arrest. Alexa walking out of the store with the boy. Bishop's squad car pulling up. The moment he arrested her. But then, a second squad car appeared at the edge of the frame. And stepping out of it, Sergeant Carter. Alexa leaned in. He stood near the scene, watching. He saw everything. But before Bishop arrested Alexa, Carter backed away, disappearing into the night. "He ran," Josh whispered. Why would he run? Alexa's stomach tightened. Because he knew something. Josh pulled up Carter's personnel file. Last seen 2 nights ago. Currently on indefinite leave. No contact since. A chill ran down Alexa's spine. Carter had vanished. And that meant someone wanted him gone. Josh grabbed a flash drive, copying the footage. "We need to find him before they do." Alexa nodded. "Then we better move fast." Back on the streets. The night air was thick with the scent of rain as Alexa and Josh walked away from the precinct, their minds racing. "If Carter's missing, it's because he knew something he wasn't supposed to," Josh said. Alexa's jaw clenched. "And if we don't find him first, we're next." Josh hesitated. "How do we even start looking?" Alexa pulled out her phone, dialing a number she hadn't called in a long time. After 2 rings, a voice answered. "Rodriguez." "It's been a while, Lenny," Alexa said. Josh raised an eyebrow. "Who's Lenny?" Alexa ignored him. "I need a location on a missing cop. William Carter." A pause. Then Lenny exhaled. "I hope you know what you're walking into." "I always do," Alexa murmured. A few seconds later, her phone buzzed. A location pin appeared on the screen. Carter was last seen at an abandoned warehouse on the docks. Josh leaned in. "That looks like a setup." Alexa's lips pressed into a thin line. "It is." Josh stared at her. "We're still going, aren't we?" Alexa locked eyes with him. "Of course we are." She turned toward the street, hailing a cab. Somewhere out there, Sergeant Carter held the key to everything. And Alexa wasn't about to let him slip through her fingers. The cab ride to the abandoned warehouse on the docks was silent, except for the rhythmic patter of rain against the windshield. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by the eerie emptiness of the industrial district, a place forgotten by time, where deals were made in the shadows and people disappeared from public records. Josh sat beside Alexa, arms crossed, his fingers tapping anxiously against his sleeve. He was a lawyer, not a field operative, and he sure as hell wasn't used to following a former Navy SEAL into what was most likely a trap. "I just want to go on record and say this is a terrible idea," he muttered. Alexa didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, her mind sharp, her breathing steady. "Duly noted," Josh sighed. "We could wait until morning, gather more intel, maybe talk to some people first." "We don't have time," Alexa interrupted. Josh exhaled sharply. "Right. Because waiting might get Carter taken out of the picture." Alexa's jaw tightened. Carter was a loose end. And in her experience, loose ends didn't last long. The cab slowed to a stop a few blocks from their destination. "End of the line," the driver muttered. Alexa paid him in cash. She and Josh stepped into the rain-soaked street, the salty air thick with the stench of rust and old oil. The warehouse loomed ahead, its metal walls streaked with grime, its broken windows gaping like hollow eyes. Josh shivered. Yeah, totally not a horror movie waiting to happen. Alexa ignored him, scanning the perimeter. No patrols. No lookouts. Too quiet. "Stay behind me," she murmured. Josh scoffed. Like that was ever in question. They moved forward, Alexa leading the way, her muscles coiled like a loaded spring. Every instinct in her body screamed danger. She didn't ignore it. She embraced it. Inside the warehouse, the interior was worse than the outside. Rusting beams, flickering lights, a faint metallic tang in the air. Either blood or old machinery, Alexa couldn't tell. Josh exhaled. This place is charming. A creak echoed in the distance. Footsteps. Alexa raised a hand, signaling Josh to stay put. She moved forward, pressing herself against a stack of crates, her footsteps soundless against the concrete. Then a muffled grunt. Alexa turned the corner. Sergeant Carter, tied to a chair, bruises blooming across his face, his left eye swollen shut. Josh hissed under his breath. Damn. Alexa moved swiftly, kneeling beside Carter. His head lolled forward, but at the touch of her fingers against his wrist, his eyes fluttered open. Rodriguez. His voice was hoarse, his throat raw. You're lucky we found you first, Alexa murmured, already working on the knots binding his wrists. Carter winced in pain. They know you're coming. Alexa's hands froze. A click echoed behind her. Josh's eyes widened. Alexa. Too late. The barrel of a gun pressed against the back of her skull. The trap springs. You should have stayed buried, Rodriguez. The voice was smooth, calculated, Detective Bishop. Alexa didn't move. She was trained for this. But Josh was breathing too fast. Let me guess, Alexa said calmly. Captain Stokes sent you? Bishop chuckled. You really think he's the one running this show? A flicker of cold realization ran through her. So there's someone bigger. Of course there is, Bishop said. And you? You're just an inconvenience. Alexa exhaled slowly, calculating her next move. One man behind her. Two more flanking the entrance. She could hear them breathing, shifting their weight. Gunfire would be messy, but hand-to-hand, that she could handle. Bishop leaned in, lowering his voice. I know what you're thinking. You think you can take me, don't you? Alexa smiled slightly. No, Bishop. I know I can. Before he could react, Alexa moved. She twisted, slamming her elbow into his side, forcing him to stumble back. Bishop choked, regaining his balance. Alexa grabbed his wrist, twisting the firearm from his grip. The two other men reacted too slow. Josh, for once, was smart enough to duck. Alexa pivoted, launching herself at the closest man. A sharp kick to the knee. He staggered, grabbing onto a crate for support. He cried out, dropping his weapon. The third gunman raised his pistol, but Alexa was faster. She grabbed the fallen man's gun and aimed. One warning shot into the air. The third man froze. Bishop staggered back, gasping. Still think I should have stayed buried? Alexa asked, stepping toward him. Bishop's eyes darted to the door. He was going to run. No, you don't. Alexa lunged, grabbing him before he could flee. She slammed him against a crate, pinning him in place. Who are you protecting? She hissed. Bishop shook his head, fear creeping into his features. You're already finished, Rodriguez, he whispered. You just don't know it yet. Alexa pressed harder. Who are you protecting? Bishop coughed, spitting words instead of blood. You think Stokes is the real threat, he rasped. You think this is just some dirty cop scandal? Alexa's grip tightened. Then tell me what it is. Bishop smiled. It was a terrible smile, because it was the smile of a man who knew he had already won. Rodriguez, he whispered. It goes all the way to the top. Then a loud noise rang out. Bishop's body jerked, his eyes widening. Something hit him. Dart? Alexa spun around, gun raised. But the shooter was already gone. The distant sound of footsteps faded into the rain. Josh stared in horror. What the hell just happened? Alexa gritted her teeth, her mind racing. Bishop was silenced, because someone bigger than Stokes was pulling the strings. And now they knew she was coming. She turned to Carter. Tell me everything you know. Carter, still pale from his injuries, swallowed hard. Rodriguez, you just made yourself a target. Alexa clenched her jaw. Good, she said. Then they'll know where to find me. The rain came down harder as Alexa, Josh, and Carter sped away from the docks in a stolen sedan, the tires splashing through puddles as they weaved through the empty streets. Alexa gripped the wheel tightly, her mind racing. Bishop was gone. He had been silenced before he could reveal the full truth. That meant someone else was watching. Someone powerful enough to control the game. Josh sat in a passenger seat, flipping through the flash drive he had taken from the precinct. His fingers trembled slightly. This isn't just about Bishop or Stokes, he muttered. There's an entire network here. Bribes, falsified reports, entire cases just erased. Someone's been covering up crimes for years. Alexa didn't respond, keeping her eyes on the road. In the back seat, Sergeant Carter groaned, holding his ribs. His face was bruised, his left eye barely open, but he was alive. You good back there? Alexa asked. Carter exhaled sharply. I don't know if I'd call this good, but yeah, I'm breathing. Josh turned back toward him. Then start talking. Why did Bishop back off that night? Why did you disappear? Carter shifted uncomfortably. He was hesitating. Alexa glanced at him in the rearview mirror, her voice sharp. Carter, if you're holding anything back, now is the time to come clean. A long silence. Then Carter sighed. All right, you want the truth? Here it is. That night, I was supposed to be the one to arrest you. Josh blinked. What? Carter nodded. I was the first officer on the scene. I got the call about a woman breaking into the store. When I arrived, I saw you, just standing there with a kid, nothing suspicious. I knew something was off. Alexa tightened her grip on the wheel. And then Bishop showed up. Yeah, Carter muttered. Except he wasn't supposed to. The call never went to his unit, but somehow he was already there. Like he knew. Josh's expression darkened. You're saying this was planned. More than planned, Carter said. It was staged. Alexa's stomach twisted. She had known something was off, but this confirmed it. Bishop didn't just see her by accident. He had been sent there. Josh rubbed his face. Okay, so Bishop was setting Alexa up. Why? Who gave the order? Carter looked away. That's where it gets worse. A pause. Bishop didn't work for Stokes, Carter said quietly. He answered to someone else. Someone high up. Alexa's breath slowed. How high up? Carter's hands curled into fists. As high as it gets. The chase begins. The sedan turned a sharp corner, entering a quiet side street. Then Alexa saw it. In the mirror headlights. 2 black SUVs. No plates. They weren't police. We've got company, she muttered. Josh turned, his face going pale. Oh, come on. Can we get through one night without being chased? Carter swore under his breath. They're not here to talk. Alexa floored the gas. The engine roared as the car surged forward, tires screeching against the wet pavement. The SUVs accelerated, closing the distance. "Hold on," Alexa growled. She cut the wheel hard, veering onto an overpass. The city lights flickered past in a blur, rain splattering across the windshield. The SUVs followed. Josh gripped the door handle. "They're gaining on us." Alexa narrowed her eyes. She could outrun them, but not forever. Her mind calculated her options. 1, keep running. No, they'd be boxed in eventually. 2, ditch the car. Risky. 3, fight back. Dangerous, but necessary. She made her decision. "Carter, you good to move?" He winced. "I don't like where this is going." "Josh, take the wheel." Josh's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" Alexa didn't wait for an answer. She let go of the wheel, climbing through the window and onto the roof of the speeding car. Josh scrambled to take control, panic in his voice. "I hate everything about this." Alexa balanced herself, rain slicking her grip as she crouched low. The SUVs were almost on top of them. The first SUV pulled alongside. A figure leaned out the window. Alexa moved first. She leaped, landing on the hood of the SUV. The driver swerved, trying to shake her off. But she was faster. With one fluid motion, she swung through the passenger side window, landing a precise strike to the driver's arm. The SUV swerved violently, smashing into a guardrail. Alexa pushed herself off the vehicle just in time, rolling onto the wet pavement. The SUV skidded, crashing to a halt. But the second SUV was still coming. Alexa forced herself up, ignoring the pain. She sprinted, cutting through an alley as the vehicle slammed on its brakes behind her. A voice yelled from inside. "Rodriguez, you can't run forever." She didn't stop. She vanished into the night, regrouping. 20 minutes later, Alexa rejoined Josh and Carter in a dimly lit parking garage. The stolen sedan was parked in the shadows, engine idling. Josh stepped out, looking like he had aged 10 years. "Are you insane?" Alexa didn't answer. She turned to Carter. "Who do they work for?" she demanded. Carter exhaled. "You're not going to like the answer." Alexa crossed her arms. "Try me." Carter hesitated, then finally spoke. "It's bigger than just dirty cops. This goes all the way up to government officials. There's a name, one name that connects everything." Josh leaned in. "Who?" Carter swallowed hard. "Senator Thomas Caldwell." Silence. Then Josh let out a slow breath. "We're screwed." Alexa's fist clenched. A U.S. senator. That changed everything. This wasn't just about clearing her name anymore. This was about taking down the entire system. She turned toward the car, her voice steady. "We need to disappear." Josh frowned. "For how long?" Alexa's eyes were cold. "Until we're ready to take the fight to them." The safe house was a forgotten relic, a rundown apartment in the outskirts of the city, the kind of place no one paid attention to. Peeling wallpaper, flickering lights, dust settling in corners that had been abandoned for years. But right now, it was the safest place Alexa, Josh, and Carter could be. Josh sat at the wooden dining table, his laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled down the screen, digital footprints of corruption, bribes, and cover-ups buried deep in government files. Alexa stood by the window, peering out at the street below, her mind running through every possible outcome. They had just become enemies of the state. Carter sat nearby, still recovering from his injuries. He watched them both, his expression grim. "Tell me you found something," Alexa finally said, turning to Josh. Josh exhaled. "I found more than something. This is a full-blown operation. Caldwell isn't just dirty. He's running an entire network of law enforcement, judges, and corporate leaders. Every major scandal in the last 5 years, traced back to his office." Alexa clenched her jaw. And Bishop was just another pawn in the game. Carter nodded. Bishop was ambitious, but he was small-time. Caldwell was the one calling the shots. And now that we know that, we've got a problem. Josh's fingers paused over the keyboard. He glanced up. "What kind of problem?" Carter sighed. "Caldwell doesn't just cover his tracks. He erases them. Completely. The fact that we're still alive means he hasn't decided how to handle us yet. But when he does..." Alexa's stomach tightened. "We have to move first." Josh hesitated. You're talking about exposing a U.S. senator. That's career suicide for me and a death sentence for you. Alexa smirked. Good thing I don't scare easily. Josh rubbed his temples. I can't believe I let you talk me into this. Alexa moved toward him, placing a hand on the back of his chair. You knew what this was when we started. We don't stop now. Josh sighed. Okay, so what's the plan? Alexa turned to Carter. You used to work for these people. You tell me, where do we hit them where it hurts? Carter hesitated. Then, Caldwell's offshore accounts. If we can drain them or expose them, we cut off his power. Josh's eyes widened. That's federal-level hacking. We need access to his personal servers, and that's... Alexa interrupted. Not impossible. Where's he keeping them? Carter exhaled. His private residence. He has a data vault built into his estate. Top-tier security, biometric scans, motion sensors, everything. Josh blinked. Let me guess. You want to break in? Alexa's smirk returned. We're not just breaking in, Josh. We're tearing his world apart. The setup. They moved fast. They had to. Josh spent the next 2 hours constructing a cyber blueprint of Caldwell's estate. Security cameras, motion sensors, entry points. He studied them like a man memorizing the map to his own execution. Front gate is a no-go, he muttered. Private security detail, rotating shifts, and guard dogs. Alexa raised an eyebrow. Dogs. Yeah, big ones. She smirked. I like dogs. Josh sighed. There's also a secondary access point through the service entrance. Low security, meant for catering and deliveries. If we can slip through there, we can access the data vault. Carter leaned in. What's our time frame? Josh hesitated. 12 minutes. That's how long I can loop the security feeds before they realize something's wrong. Alexa nodded. Then we don't waste time. Josh groaned. This is insane. We're about to break into a senator's house and steal evidence of corruption. If we get caught, we won't, Alexa said flatly. Josh exhaled. Right. Because that's how this always works. Alexa patted his shoulder. Glad we're on the same page. Carter checked his watch. We move in 1 hour. They exchanged a glance. It was now or never. The break-in. The Caldwell estate sat on a hill overlooking the city, surrounded by high walls and security cameras. A monument to power, wealth, and untouchable corruption. Alexa, Josh, and Carter moved in the shadows, dressed in dark clothing, avoiding the main cameras. Josh held a tablet, his screen flashing with security feed data. Okay, I'm running the loop now. Alexa didn't hesitate. She moved fast, scaling the fence in one fluid motion. Carter followed, his movements slower due to his injuries. Josh gritted his teeth and climbed after them, muttering under his breath. I did not sign up for this. They landed inside. The service entrance was unguarded, just as Josh predicted. They slipped inside. Inside the fortress. The air inside was cold, sterile, too clean for home. This wasn't just a house. It was a bunker. Alexa led the way, moving with precision. Every muscle in her body was trained for moments like this. Vault room should be ahead, Josh whispered. They rounded the corner and froze. 2 security guards stood outside the room. Josh muttered a curse. They weren't on the blueprint. Alexa exhaled. We handle it. Carter stepped forward. Wait. He pulled out a small security badge, one he had swiped from his time working with law enforcement. He stepped toward the guards, his expression calm. Gentlemen, he said smoothly. Senator Caldwell asked me to run a security check. System flagged a potential breach. The guards hesitated. No one told us. That's the point, Carter interrupted. He wants this handled quietly. The guards exchanged a look. Then one of them nodded. Go ahead. Alexa had to admit she was impressed. Carter swiped the keycard. The door clicked open. They stepped inside. The vault. Josh rushed to the console. Okay, we got one shot at this, he muttered, plugging in a flash drive. The screen lit up. Lines of encrypted financial transactions, secret offshore accounts, connections to law enforcement officials. It was everything they needed. Alexa watched as Josh copied the files, her pulse steady. How long? She asked. 90 seconds. Carter paced, his eyes on the door. Too long. Then the alarm blared. Damn it, Josh hissed. They found us. Alexa moved fast. She grabbed the flash drive, yanked Josh to his feet. We're leaving. No. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Carter pulled out a smoke canister from his jacket. Cover your eyes. He tossed it. Thick smoke billowed into the room, obscuring them as the door burst open. Move, Alexa ordered. They ran. Bullets didn't fly. Caldwell's men wouldn't risk damaging the vault. But footsteps chased them. They sprinted through the hall, cutting through corridors. Alexa saw the exit ahead. They raced for it. Then, just before escaping, a voice boomed over the intercom. You really thought you could steal from me? Alexa's stomach dropped. Senator Caldwell knew, and he was waiting for them. The hallway was filled with thick, swirling smoke, alarms blaring through the mansion as Alexa, Josh, and Carter sprinted for the exit. But the second they burst through the last door into the cold night air, the floodlights snapped on, blinding them. Alexa skidded to a halt. It was a trap. Surrounding them was a wall of armed security. Black-clad men, holding stun batons, forming an unbreakable barrier. No visible guns. Caldwell wanted them alive. And then, the voice. That was an impressive attempt, Rodriguez. From the mansion's balcony, Senator Thomas Caldwell stood, dressed in a tailored suit, sipping a glass of whiskey like he had all the time in the world. I knew you were reckless, but breaking into my home? That takes a special kind of arrogance. Josh muttered under his breath. Oh, this guy's got Bond villain energy. Alexa ignored him, eyes locked on Caldwell. You knew we were coming. Caldwell smirked. Of course. You really thought I wouldn't anticipate this? You made too much noise, Rodriguez. Carter tensed beside her. If you knew, why let us get this far? Caldwell swirled his drink. Because I wanted you to see it for yourself. To understand how outmatched you are. The security team closed in, forming a tighter circle. Josh gulped. So, any brilliant ideas? Alexa's mind raced. They couldn't fight their way out. They couldn't run. Which meant they had to flip the game. She straightened, meeting Caldwell's gaze with steel in her eyes. You wouldn't be talking if you were planning to get rid of us right now. So why don't we skip the speech and get to the point? Caldwell grinned. See, that's what I like about you, Rodriguez. You know how to play. He motioned to his men. Bring them inside. The negotiation. The study was expensive but cold. Leather chairs, bookshelves filled with unread novels, a single fireplace crackling behind Caldwell's massive mahogany desk. Carter sat in one chair, hands zip-tied behind his back. Josh was next to him, whispering something about how this was a terrible idea. Alexa sat across from Caldwell, untied, because he wanted to talk. Caldwell leaned back, watching her with amusement. You've put me in a very inconvenient position, Rodriguez. Alexa crossed her arms. You're a U.S. Senator. I don't believe in inconvenient for people like you. Caldwell chuckled. Fair point. But here's my dilemma. This little stunt of yours? It's forced my hand. Josh scoffed. You mean we actually scared you? Caldwell ignored him. I could make you disappear tonight, Rodriguez. Wipe you from the system. Make you a cautionary tale for anyone else who thinks they can challenge me. Alexa didn't blink. Then why haven't you? Caldwell smirked. Then he clicked a remote. The TV screen on the wall lit up, a live security feed of Alexa's mother. She was sitting in a cafe, completely unaware, sipping coffee. Josh inhaled sharply. Oh, hell no. Alexa didn't react. But inside, her blood turned ice cold. Caldwell took a sip of whiskey. It would be a shame if someone close to you got caught in the crossfire, wouldn't it? Alexa forced her breathing to stay even. You touch her, and I burn your entire world to the ground. Caldwell's smile widened. That's exactly why I like you. He leaned forward. Here's my offer. Walk away. Disappear. Forget this ever happened. And your mother. She keeps living her quiet little life untouched. Silence. Josh shook his head. Alexa, don't even think about. She cut him off. And if I don't? Caldwell sighed. Then I'll make sure she disappears first, just so you understand how serious I am. A long pause. Then Alexa nodded. All right. Josh's head snapped toward her. Wait, what? You can't seriously be considering this. Carter narrowed his eyes. He had known Alexa long enough to recognize that look. She wasn't giving up. She was buying time. Caldwell grinned. Smart choice. He gestured to his guards. Let them go. The security team cut Carter and Josh loose. Your car is waiting outside, Caldwell said. Take it. Drive away. And if you even think about trying this again. His eyes darkened. Next time, there won't be a conversation. The long drive. The silence in the car was heavy. Alexa drove, her grip on the wheel tight enough to break it. Josh sat beside her, arms crossed. I hope you have some kind of master plan, because from where I'm sitting, we just lost. Carter, in the back seat, finally spoke. She's not giving up. Are you, Rodriguez? Alexa exhaled. No. Josh threw his hands up. Great. Love that for us. What's the play? Alexa's eyes remained on the road. Caldwell thinks he won because he let us walk. She tapped the flash drive on the dashboard, the one she had stolen from his office. But he made a mistake. Josh frowned. How so? Alexa's lips curled into a smirk. He underestimated us. She handed the flash drive to Josh. We're not taking this to the FBI. Not the cops. Not the press. Josh's eyes widened as realization hit. You're thinking bigger, aren't you? Alexa nodded. We're taking this to the public. The final move. By the time the video leaked online, it was already too late for Caldwell to stop it. News stations ran with it. Journalists dug deeper. The evidence was undeniable. Bribery, cover-ups, illegal surveillance, and the biggest revelation, Caldwell's direct involvement in silencing whistleblowers. The senator went on damage control, denying everything. But the FBI launched an investigation. His allies started turning against him. One by one, the people who had once protected him cut ties, leaving him exposed. And then the final blow, an arrest warrant. Alexa watched the news from a rooftop, sipping a cup of coffee as Caldwell's mugshot flashed across the screen. Senator Thomas Caldwell, now facing multiple federal charges, was taken into custody earlier this morning after overwhelming evidence was brought to light. Josh joined her, leaning against the ledge. Well, that's one way to bring down a government official. Carter smirked. You ever think about running for office, Rodriguez? Alexa chuckled. Not my style. Josh exhaled. So, what now? Alexa took a slow sip of coffee. Now, she turned to them, a dangerous glint in her eyes. We find out who gave Caldwell his orders. Josh groaned. I was afraid you'd say that. Carter grinned. Looks like the job's not finished. The sun rose over the city. And Alexa? She was just getting started.